You've taken away my sorrows, and you've taken away my...
All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, May the 31st, 2022, and I'm pre-recording this because I'm actually traveling right now, but this is I wanted there to be a live Daily Manna for you, even if it's not live for me today. And today it's the 31st, so I was going to be doing Psalms today, but I'm not actually. I'm not going to do a Psalm today. I'm going to, a couple of years ago, we went through Jeremiah, and so we're going to look at Jeremiah chapter 2 today. We're going to look at Jeremiah chapter 2. I gave it a kind of a different name, as you can see, Trading an Oil Well for an Old Rundown Gas Station. And I just thought I'd use something different. I think the Lord's analogies are probably better. But, in this day and age or today, like right now, what we're paying for gas, and be like, boy, it'd be nice to have an oil well. And if you had an oil well that was just, you had, just was going to be perpetually providing the oil that you need, to trade it for one of those old gas stations that you drive past that hasn't been used in years, some old Phillips 66 or something, and, it'd be a ridiculous trade. And yet, that's basically, in one sense, it would be insane. It'd be insane. You'd be like, what are you doing? Why would you do a thing like that? And that's basically the place where the Lord is at in this passage toward his people. These are his people. So Jeremiah now comes with the word of the Lord to God's people in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 1. It says, again, the word of Adonai came to me, saying, go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, thus says Adonai, I remember the devotion of your youth. And he uses the word there, he uses the word chesed. He uses this love, this covenant loyalty, this faithfulness. I remember the love of your youth, the love that you had at first for me. He says, your love is a bride, and the way you followed me in the wilderness, in a land not sown. Right. So the Lord is remembering that early part of when he had brought his people out. The nation had a time of devotion to the Lord, and it's expressed by the Lord saying, you were like a bride to me. When I led you in a land that had not yet been planted, had not been sown, you followed me, you trusted me. Verse 3 says, Israel was kadosh, was holy to Adonai, the first fruits of the harvest. So here, where you read this in verse 3, the first fruits of the harvest, it uses the word the beginning of the harvest, the beginning of the coming in. It uses like the word for in the beginning, breshit. It's reshit tabuato, which is the beginning of the starting point of the ingathering. You were the first. Israel was the first fruits of God's plan that all humanity would return to him, would be restored to him. That was going to come through and is going to come through the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the people of God he's looking and saying, what has happened here? Israel was holy to me, the first fruits of the harvest, the beginning of the coming in. And at that time, he says, all who devoured him were held guilty. Catastrophe overtook them, declares Adonai. He says, anybody who touched you was held guilty. I was so protective over you. I guarded you. Anybody that touched you was facing catastrophe, right? They incurred disaster. Verse 4, he says, Shema, hear the word of Adonai, O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus says Adonai, what fault, and he uses this word avel, what iniquity did your fathers find in me, that they strayed so far from me, that they distanced themselves? What was it about me that was so bad? He says, what? Why did they run the other way? Why have they rejected me? They walked after worthless things. They walked after emptiness, after futility, delusion, becoming then worthless. They becoming worthless themselves, becoming empty. What the thing they ran after, they've become like. They walked after worthlessness, emptiness, futility, and have become what they ran after. But if you run after the Lord, we become like him, right? So where did I go wrong with you? This is the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Again, and Jeremiah wants to make it clear. This is not Jeremiah's words. The Lord himself is calling out to his people, to all of Israel, to all the families of Israel. What did I do? What did I do wrong with you, with your fathers? What transgression, what iniquity, what was wrong that your fathers found in me to deserve such treatment? Right? Was I guilty of something terribly dreadful that they would just go so far away from me? Right? So here you have this amazing paradox that just in terms of the creator of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, humbling himself in such a way as to ask a question like this. What did I do? Right? Like that. What did I did everything. He's practically begging, pursuing an unfaithful bride. Right? We see this picture. We've seen this picture. Would have seen this picture earlier, because Hosea precedes Jeremiah. And this is what the Lord expressed through Hosea. And it says they walked after emptiness and they became empty. Now, in the minds of the people, of Israel, they probably think, we didn't forsake the Lord as much as we just expanded our understanding. Their syncretism, their mixing of things was in their minds not an abandonment of the Lord. But he says they abandoned me, and for what? They abandoned me for nothing. They abandoned me for king useless, king nothing. They left the king of the universe for king emptiness. What in the world? Verse 6, it says, they did not ask, where is Adonai? Where is the Lord who brought us up from the land of Egypt and led us through the wilderness, through a land of deserts and rifts, through a land of drought and distress, through a land where no one travels, where no one lives? Right? He says, no one's saying, where is the Lord? The Lord who led us through, nobody gets through there. Nobody can make it through there. And the Lord led us through there. Yet I brought you into a fertile land to eat of its goodness and its fruit and goodness. Verse 7, when you came, you defiled my land. You made my heritage an abomination. Right? So here, the Lord, in the Exodus, he had displayed his love and his glory and just in such magnificent abundance, right? And that's why Israel sins against him, forsaking him to return to some nothing gods is such a, here he has done so much, and yet they turn on him. What are you're trading him for what? In the ongoing life of the people, where matters such as food and drink and rainfall and fertility of the land and the fertility of their womb are central, remembering the Lord's provision in the wilderness, when he brought you through where there was only death, where there was no life there. There was nothing there that could have sustained you, and yet you made it through there over 40 years, and you grew. And nobody's saying, where is the Lord? It's this really powerful rebuke of God's people. You've traded all that I gave you for nothing. And then I brought you into the land, and you polluted the land that I brought you to. Verse 8, he says, and here back in verse 6, he said, they didn't ask, where is Adonai? And now he says, number 8, repeats that language, but says the Kohanim, the priests, didn't ask, where is Adonai? He says, the Torah experts, those seizing Torah, those who know, they didn't even know me. Those who take hold of my instructions don't understand me. They don't know me. He says, the shepherds rebelled against me. They defied me. And the prophets prophesied by Baal and went after unprofitable things. They went after literally no benefit things. No, it says after not helpful or not beneficial things, they walked. Right? So this is a comprehensive list of the spiritual leadership of Israel. Right? You've got the priests whose ministry is built around the presence of God, failed to even notice that he was absent. The priest didn't say, where's the Lord? They're supposed to be aware of God's presence, but they're not even noticing his absence. It says those who handle the Torah, who handle God's instructions, those who were to teach people about God's instructions, they themselves have no understanding about him. They don't know me. How are they going to teach people about me, about my instructions? They don't even know me. And then he says the shepherds, right? Shepherds who understand what it is to lead the people, to lead the sheep. The sheep have to submit to the leadership of the shepherd. And he says the shepherds who understand that have defied me. They've rebelled. Here they need the sheep to follow them. They lead the people, and yet they don't follow me. And then, of course, the prophets are prophesying in the name of a false master, in the name of a false Baal. They've walked after things that have zero benefit. So now the Lord brings his case here. He says, verse 9, he says, therefore I will plead, I will contend with you again, declares Adonai. I will contend, I will fight against your children's children. I'll take up the case there. Verse 10, he says, cross to the coasts of Kittim and see. Send to Kedar and observe carefully. See if there's anything, if there's been anything like this. So Kittim likely refers to like the coasts of Cyprus and in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Or west, on the eastern, but west of Israel to the eastern Mediterranean. And Kedar referred to the nomadic tribal people located east in northern Arabia. So basically he says, look to the west, look to the east. Look all around. Look. Does anybody else do what you've done? The fact that Israel would abandon their God is so staggering. He says, he's going to go on to say here now, that not even the idol-worshiping nations, they don't even do what you're doing. The Lord is challenging them to investigate. Cross over. Take a look and see. Send, shalach, he says. Go. Dispatch an ambassador. And discern closely. He says, look closely. He uses the word bean, which is to understand. Maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll catch on. He says, look. See if there's been anything like this. Verse 11, he says, has a nation changed its gods? He uses this word, hemir, which is to exchange or substitute. Find any nations trading out their gods? Even though their gods are not even gods. Has anyone? You see a nation changing their gods for other gods? Even though their gods aren't even gods? And yet my people, he says, exchanged their glory for worthless things. Verse 12, be appalled at this, O heavens. Be utterly horrified and dumbfounded, declares Adonai. Right? They in Psalm 106, he says, they exchanged their glory for an image of an ox eating or a grass eating ox. Like, what are you doing? It's a literal exchange. They bartered away the one who was everything. Perhaps thinking they're getting a bargain, and in return they get a big, fat nothing. Right? The sin is so stunning. The decision is so stunning that the heavens are called to take a look. He says, can you believe what you're seeing? He uses this word, shamem, which is when it's used of people. It's used to describe how someone feels when they walk upon such a horrible, like such a desolation that they're just horrified. Imagine when you first would have seen what happened at Hiroshima, or when people first came upon the camps after World War II, that just to be horrified at what you're seeing. So he calls the heavens to look upon what has happened here and to be appalled, to be horrified. Verse 13 now he says, two evils, because there are two evils they have done, my people. My people have committed two evils. They have abandoned me. It says me they have abandoned. The spring of living water, right? The fountain, the source of water that is flowing. The idea of living waters, Mayim Chayim, is fresh water, flowing water that just keeps there. You're not going to be, you have to find fresh waters, living waters, to establish a civilization. There has to be water. And so here, to be close to the Lord, he is the fountain, the spring of living waters, means there is ongoing life there. It says what they've done is they've committed two evils. They have forsaken me. They've abandoned me. They've abandoned where there's life, a spring of living waters. We don't need that. And it says, and they dug their own cisterns. They hewed out for themselves wells, but they're shattered wells. They're broken cisterns that hold no water. They can't even they can't seize water. They can't contain the water. What a ridiculous trade. Here you had ongoing source of water. It's always there, just the fountain of living water. Nope, let's leave. We don't need that. We're going to go dig our own thing. And you dig it out, and you go to pour the water in, and the water's just gone. It's just nothing. These are the two things that they've done. They've abandoned me, and they said, we're going to do our own thing. Right? And the two evils go hand in hand. And they're turning away from the Lord is turning to evil. And now, he had said in chapter 1, he says, evil is going to pour forth from the north because of the evil of idolatry. And so you have this stark contrast here where a spring of living water is forsaken. That's a natural source, free-flowing, non-stagnant water, exchanged for, in the place of the source of life, the people have hewn out for themselves useless, no benefit replacements. And what he's talking about are running after men, running after the alliances with other nations, running after other gods, other solutions. What they previously had supplied by the Lord himself was all they needed, all they would ever need. And they had abandoned it for a defective human replacement. In verse 14 he says, is Israel a slave or a servant? A slave by birth? And literally, the language says, is Israel a slave if he was born in the house? Then why has he become the plunder? It's like he was born in the house. He's my son. He's my child. Is he a servant, a slave if he was born in my house? He's a child. But why has he become plunder? He has left. I haven't traded him away. He has abandoned me. Right? How has it that the child, the one born in the house of the Most High, has become plunder? Verse 15 says, young lions have roared at him. They have roared loudly. They have made his land a waste. His cities are in ruins and uninhabited. Verse 16, even the sons of Noph and Taphanes have grazed on the crown of your head. So here in verse 15, the prophet seems to be pointing back to the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians, since Judah had not yet been fully attacked and devastated. And then you see Noph, Memphis, which is south of Cairo, had been the capital of the land of Egypt. And then the Taphanes is also Egyptian. So when it says they have grazed or shaved the crown of your head, which is utter humiliation. Hold on a second here. And then verse 17 says, have you not brought this on yourself? Which you can't see for some reason. I don't know why in the TLV they've cut out in the Masoretic text, in the Hebrew text, it says by forsaking the Lord. And for some reason that's been cut out of the TLV or accidentally left out. I don't know. But it says, have you not brought this on yourself by forsaking the Lord when he led you in the way? Right? All this happened not because the Lord abandoned them, right? Because they brought this on themselves when he was leading them in the right way. They abandoned the house in which they had been born. And it's asked as a question, which leads into this next question. It says, haven't you learned from this humiliation? Why is it you're doing this now? Verse 18, he says, but now what is on the road to Egypt? Drinking the waters of the Nile. Or what is on the road to Assyria? Drinking the waters of the Euphrates. What are you doing, he says. What are you doing on the way to Egypt? You want their water? What are you doing on the way to Assyria? You want Egypt in the southwest, Assyria in the northeast. You want their water? They keep trying to make alliances and find their hope in these other nations. We saw in Isaiah earlier or last week where the Lord's like, you've rejected the gently flowing waters of Shiloah for the mighty river basically of Assyria. And so it's coming on you. You're looking to Egypt. You're looking to Assyria as your source. These cisterns. You want to be sustained by the waters of the Nile. You want to be sustained by the Euphrates, right? And which is in contrast to the living waters which you have forsaken. Israel's attempt to get relief, to find hope in turning to other nations, in turning to other alliances, various types of alliances, have proven disastrous time after time. Yet she was still inclined to go that way rather than to trust the Lord. Right? To the worldly political mind, making allies of such big, imposing countries like Assyria and Egypt made perfect sense. But to the heart of faith, to the spiritual mind, It's blasphemous outrage because you're saying, I trust them that I can see rather than you, Lord. Even though you're the one that brought us out, even though you're the one that did all of this for us. And the Lord's saying, what have I done that you don't trust me? Verse 19, he says, your own wickedness will rebuke you. Like, you're going to taste the consequence of your own deal here. He says, your backslidings, your turnings, your rejection, your turning away is going to chide you. It's going to call you to account. It's going to be what deals with you. So your wickedness will admonish you. It will correct you, discipline you. This is the result of what you've done. See, know then, he says, and see how bad and bitter it is for you to forsake Adonai your God. Nor is there's no fear of me in you, declares the Lord Adonai Tsevaot. You're going to get a taste of what you've chosen to drink. You'll know. You'll see. You'll taste. This is what you've chosen. You'll taste the evil and the bitter that it is to go on into that path, to turn away from the Lord, to not trust in the Lord. He says, I'm releasing you to your own devices. You're intent on going your way, so I'll allow you to taste it. So now in these next verses, the Lord begins to paint a number of different pictures, quite a different analogies. So maybe you'll get it. Maybe one of these, he's like, I'm going to hit you with a bunch of different images. And maybe one of these will connect. And none of them are very sweet. None of them they're jolting, right? They're rebuking. But the heart of God here is not to insult his people just for the fun of it. Right? It's an attempt to wake people up, to get their attention. It's like in Matthew chapter 23, right? When Yeshua spoke, woe to you. You know, he's speaking to the Pharisees, to the religious leaders in Matthew chapter 23, and he says, you know, you swallow a camel and strain a gnat. You know, he's trying to paint a picture. The outside of the cup is clean, but the inside is full of death. And he paints these pictures not to insult them, but to awaken them. That maybe it will shake them out of their religious slumber, out of this delusion that they're okay. And that's how the Lord, through the prophet here, because who is this aimed at, right? He says, no, the priests don't even know I'm not with them. The Torah teachers, the Torah, those who grasp the Torah, they don't understand me. The shepherds, they're rebelling against me. The prophets are prophesying in the name of a false god. This is aimed at the spiritual leadership, right? The Lord is about to offend some godly spiritual people who, he's going to reveal in an almost cartoonish way the absurdity of what they've done. They're pictured here as the unfaithful wife, or the avid prostitute, or the unmanageable child, or moving from a wild vine to a wild donkey. We see, he says, verse 20, indeed, long ago I broke your yoke and tore off your bonds. Right? I set you free. And you said, I will not serve. Indeed, on every high hill and under every green tree, you sprawled out as a prostitute. Right? This was this willful rejection of the Lord. I will not serve. This, again, is similar to what the Lord had Hosea prophetically live out to illustrate the behavior of his people, that the Lord's bride has become an insatiable prostitute. This image dominates a lot of the verses that follow here. Right? Verse 21 says, yet I had planted you as a choice vine. Right? We saw this imagery in Isaiah chapter 5. It says, yet I had planted you as a choice vine from completely faithful seed. How then did you become to me a wandering wild vine? Right? Remember in Isaiah 5. What more could my beloved have done? It says, even though, verse 22, even though you wash with lye and use an abundance of soap, the stain of your iniquity is before me. Like, I see it. You can't scrub it away, declares the Lord Adonai. How can you say I'm not defiled? I've not gone after Baalim, after these false gods. You know, she's washing her skin, washing off the stench of her unfaithfulness, as though the Lord won't notice. I'm not cheating. I'm not unfaithful. I'm clean. But it's a stain she can't remove. It's ingrained. And what's noteworthy here is how God's people, who apparently know something of guilt and forgiveness, continue to justify themselves while they continue to sin. She's gone after many Baals, meaning the many different false gods worshipped from region to region. Though the Adonai is her only true master, the word Baal means master. He continues in verse 23, look at your behavior, look at your way in the valley, your derech in the valley. Recognize what you have done. You are a swift young camel galloping aimlessly, a wild donkey used to the wilderness, sniffing the wind in her passion. In her heat, who can restrain her? All males that pursue her will not tire themselves. At mating time, they will find her. So Israel is just... The heart of God's people here is just running after. It's putting off the scent that it's not interested in God. It's interested in anything else. And the Lord sees it, and it is every false god, everything that would seek to pull God's people away from him. Man, they're after God's people. Because God's people are saying, this is what we want. Look, I feel like we see this in our own society in which we were called by God's name, and yet we run after everything else. People running after everything else to trust in this, trust in that, looking to people and power, saying, hey, look, this is the real world. This is the way it works. This is the way we have to operate, rather than turning to God's ways. It's only because Israel now has the conscience of a brute beast here, which leads to this degrading image. Israel's not just an unfaithful bride. She's not just a prostitute without morals. She's not just a corrupt wild vine. No, she's she's a lust-driven brute beast, always on the move, always looking for mates, always available. She's no better than a female animal in heat. Such is her insatiable lust for idolatry. And this is God's people. And again, you can't reduce this to simply, this is why aren't God's people remaining faithful to him? Verse 25, he says, do not run while your feet are bare and your throat is thirsty. But you said, there is no hope. It's hopeless. No, for I have loved foreign gods. I have loved these strangers, and I will go after them. This is a call to Israel. Stop running from hill to hill. You're wearing out your sandals. Your feet are exposed. You're hurting yourself. You're running from empty cistern to empty cracked cistern, and your throat is parched. There's no water there for you. You've abandoned the wellspring of water. It says, do not run while your feet are bare. Your throat is thirsty. But you're like, no, we're committed to this. We're committed to having abandoned the wellspring of water. We're going after these cisterns. Nope, can't. It's hopeless. Nothing I can do. I'm addicted. It's hopeless. I can't stop. Verse 26. As a thief is shamed when caught, so the house of Israel is shamed. They, their kings, their princes, their kohanim, their priests, and their prophets. They say, or kept on saying, to wood. So this is this imagery in verse 27. They keep saying to wood, you are my father. And to a stone, you birthed me. They have turned their back to me and not their face. Yet, when they are in trouble, they say, rise up and save us. Right? So they're shamed. They're caught red-handed. All of them, the kings, the priests, the princes, the prophets. And it says they kept on saying. Right? This has not been a momentary lapse. This has become a way of life. You look at the wood and you go, Daddy. You look at the stone and you go, Mama. But how come when you're in trouble you don't call on them? All of a sudden when you're in trouble, you don't call on your stone and your rock. You're like, where are you, God? Rise up and save us. Verse 28, he says, where are your gods that you made for yourself? Let them come. Let them come. If they can save you when you're in trouble, for you have as many gods as you have cities, O Judah. Why do you strive with me? Why do you fight against me? He says, why do you contend with me? You've all rebelled against me, declares Adonai. Right? It's actually frightening how this section with its indictments against Judah closely fits in today's scene. When you realize, right, we don't necessarily worship ancient idols of wood and stone, but God is to be trusted. We trust things other than, we trust what we can see, what we can touch, what we can count. We trust money and we trust weapons. I saw a friend of mine posted a picture of a shirt. Ironically, he had found in a thrift store. It was a shirt, and it was it was a cross, right? But the cross is made of a dollar bill. It said, "In God we trust." And the irony of that is how so much of what we see is people that are not walking after the ways of the Lord, laying down their lives, walking the life of the cross. But they're walking a life in which what they worship is the dollar. And they say, "In God we trust," because that's their God. And they mix it all together. We have people worshiping money, people worshiping political figures, people worshiping nations and militaries, and that's what they trust in. They trust in their weapons. It says God is to be trusted and feared above all other people, all other forces, every institution, every claim of people. Only the uncreated one can be called God, and to call lifeless idols, to call created beings by the same name is a complete contradiction in terms. They cannot save. Their powerless futility is underscored by the fact that there are so many of them, as many as you have cities, he says. And yet combined all together, they are helpless and worthless in the time of trouble. Call them all. Where are they? And the shocker at the end of that passage is that God's people are actually trying to accuse him. Why do you contend with me? Why do you strive with me? You have all rebelled against me, he says. They have the gall to complain to the Lord, to accuse the Lord, when he's simply allowing them to taste what they've run after. Here, drink out of your cisterns. Enjoy. They're blaming God for their calamities instead of recognizing that they are responsible. Verse 30, he says, "In vain I struck your children. They took no correction. Your sword devoured your prophets like a ravaging lion." Verse 31, "You, generation, heed the Lord's word. Have I been a wilderness to Israel, or a land of thick darkness? Why do my people say, we are free to roam? We won't come to see you anymore." He says, "Oh, generation, you see the word of the Lord." There's a pleading here. Have I been a wilderness to you? Is that what I am to you? A foreboding, dark, and uninhabitable place? What's wrong with me that you forsake me for other gods that are not even gods? But Israel just is running after sin, determined to find greener pastures and never to return. Continues, I'm going to read these final verses. Verse 32, "Can a virgin forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire?" I think about a bride and how she remembers her jewelry and the way she was on her wedding day. Gosh, the remembering in detail, and yet my people have forgotten me days without number. How clever are your ways of seeking love. Therefore you even taught wicked women your ways. Moreover, on your skirts is found the blood of the innocent poor, yet you did not find them breaking in. Why are the innocent poor? You going to blame it on that they were breaking into your house? Nope. No. You have been, he's describing the wickedness here. You can't blame it on you were defending yourself. You've gone after them. Yet in spite of all these things, verse 35, he says, "You say, I'm innocent. Surely his anger is turned away from me. I didn't do anything. See, I will pass judgment on you since you say I haven't sinned." The Lord says, as long as you keep denying it, as long as you won't recognize it, as long as you won't repent of it and turn from it, you say I haven't sinned, I'm going to pass judgment on you. Why do you make light of changing your way? You'll be put to shame by Egypt, as you were put to shame by Assyria. The very ones in whom the cisterns that you seek to trust you will be ashamed. You will also go out from there with your hands in your head, for Adonai has rejected those in whom you trust. You will not prosper by them. Right? May the Lord show us as his people. Listen, this is not a rebuke. This is not a rebuke of a people who don't know the things of God. This passage is not aimed at the pagan world that knows nothing of God. This is aimed at a people called by his name. This is aimed at the prophets, at the teachers, at the pastors, right? At the priests. This is aimed at them who are doing all their things and they don't understand the heart of God. And they're running to everything else, mixing it all up and saying, we haven't done anything wrong. We haven't done anything wrong. Just because you say it doesn't mean you haven't. Doesn't mean you're not going to face it. And as long as we fail to humble ourselves and repent and turn to him, the more intent we are on running toward empty cisterns in which there is no water, forsaking the Lord, the more intent we are on our doom. The Lord is calling his people to turn to him, to repent. May our hearts be tender to his voice. And may the spiritual leadership in our nation hear his voice and repent and turn to him. May we be the people he's called us to be. All right. Well, again, this week we'll have different daily manna every day, but it's something we've probably looked at before, a passage we've looked at before, but it'll still be fresh, anew for us for that day. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.
I'm pressed but not crushed, persecuted, not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. I am blessed beyond the curse, for his promise will endure, that his joy is gonna be my strength. Though the sorrow may last for the night, his joy comes with the morning. Yeah, I'm trading my sorrows, I'm trading my shame, I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. I'm trading my sickness, I'm trading my pain, I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. We say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, yes, Lord, amen. I am pressed but not crushed, persecuted, not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. I am blessed beyond the curse, for his promise will endure, that his joy is gonna be my strength. Oh, though the sorrow may last for the night, his joy comes with the morning. Yeah, I'm trading my sorrows, I'm trading my shame, I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. Oh, I'm trading my sickness, I'm trading my pain, and I'm laying them down for the joy of the Lord. Woo! La 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 la.
Oh, that's good. Come on, let's sing that again.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Yeah! Oh, Lord, you've taken away my sorrows.